Good afternoon. Captain Justin DeLeon here from the University of Iowa, APMS at Iowa, and also the MS3 instructor. Today, we're going to be talking about the third paragraph of the operation order, the execution paragraph. Our main reference for today is the Ranger Handbook 2017, TC3-21.76. Okay, so we go into our execution paragraph. This is usually going to be our most detailed and lengthy paragraph of the operation order. And it's likely that when you're preparing your op order, whether it's written or briefed, you're probably going to spend the majority of your time preparing this paragraph. And the reason is because it is the how of our operation, all right? Whereas in our mission statement, we talked about the who, what, where, when, why. This is going to in detail go over the how we're going to accomplish this mission, all right? So let's kind of dive into it. The first three kind of go together, all right? And then the rest kind of goes together as well, all right? So we're going to talk about the first three sections of the execution. So the first section is called Commander's Intent. A lot of times you'll just see CI, all right? Commander's Intent. This is where us as the commander or the platoon leader, whoever's in charge of this operation, is going to drive home what the purpose is of this mission. What are we trying to accomplish really? Again, and the way I like to describe it, this isn't doctrinal, but a great way to describe this is it's almost a restatement of your why, the why section from your mission statement itself, okay? Because that drives home the purpose. All right, so when you usually see the commander's intent, it's going to start with these words. I'm going to start with the purpose of this operation is. All right, you're almost always going to see those 6 words at the beginning of this sentence. All right, and if you use that, people are going to understand what you're getting at. Okay. All right, so let's say we are doing an ambush, and we're doing it on the flank to protect our buddies. So one of the biggest reasons why we're doing this ambush is, and the why might be, hey, the purpose of this operation is to deny enemy movement into the AO. Boom, there it is. We're hammering home what our job is. Yes, we're doing an ambush, but what we're really trying to accomplish is we're trying to ensure that no enemy comes in from our avenue of approach into the AO and affects our buddies when they're doing something else. Maybe they're doing a raid or an attack, and we're protecting the right flank by, really denying anyone coming in that avenue of approach. Okay, commander's intent. The next is going to be your key tasks. I'm going to just label KT. All right. I'll check these off as we go. So we're talking about key tasks now. This is something that we definitely make sure we don't want to get confused with tasks of subordinate units. A lot of times we confuse these and what they are. They're very different, okay? So what a key task is it's a task that we as a collective group, whether it's a platoon or a company, we must accomplish this task in order to complete the mission, all right? And if we don't complete the task, there's a likelihood that the mission will fail. So these are very, very strict, very important tasks that we need to complete. Okay, when we're looking at our key tasks, typically what we need is we need 1 to 5. 1 to 5 of these, all right? You should not have more than 5, and you should have at least 1. All right, having more than 5 can get confusing to your subordinates. It can make them be focusing on too many things. You need to keep these very, a small number to ensure that people will give them the proper relevancy when they're planning their missions. Okay, so an example of a key task. These are sometimes kind of challenging to come up with. Again, you don't need to come up with them. You just need to kind of rationalize and think through the operation that you're doing and see what is important. Okay, so for instance, if I'm doing a recon, all right, I need to infiltrate my objective without being compromised by enemy or civilians. Okay, so ensuring I don't get compromised by enemy and civilians during my infiltration. That is a key task to a recon. Okay, whereas with another mission, it might not so much be a key task. Yes, we don't want to ever get compromised, but in a raid, if my assault element is moving in and they get compromised by the enemy, we're just going to roll into the assault, into the raid, and it still might be in a successful mission. With recon, if we're compromised, it's usually going to be a fail. Okay, so they're going to relate differently to every mission. All right, one might be for an ambush, ensuring serviceability of all 249s and 240s within my platoon. Okay, it's pretty difficult to do a successful ambush if I have no crew served weapons or no machine guns. So ensuring that those are serviceable is going to be a key task. So you kind of got to think through, hey, what's the operation I'm doing? What are things that I need to make sure I do in order to make, these go or no-go events that I must have completed for this operation to be successful. So think through those. All right, again, you only need one. You can have no more than 5. Okay, the last of this beginning part is called the end state. All right, this is kind of interesting. This is, in my opinion, this is also very similar to the commander's intent, kind of the way it sounds. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to drive home again the purpose of the operation, and really what we're saying is we kind of want to make a statement, all right, of what a present voice statement of what the future should look like, if that makes sense. All right, so kind of the way we look at this a lot of times, we look at it from an enemy standpoint and a friendly standpoint. All right, and sometimes you'll even get, put in a terrain in there as well. Not always, but so we have enemy and friendly. So let's say I'm doing an attack, I'm trying to, seize a hilltop or to enable future operations. So I may say something like, the end state of this operation is friendly forces have seized hilltop 179 and are currently occupying that hill. Enemy forces are withdrawing north behind the 2-4 northing, and all key terrain is in control of friendly hands. All right, that's an end state. It's saying, hey, present voice statement of what the future is going to look like. All right. Okay, let's move forward. This is kind of going to go into the how now of the mission statement. So again, this kind of lays out the purpose and some of those key things that we got to accomplish. And now we're really going to get into the how. All right. So when we start talking about the how, the first part that we talk about is the concept of the operation. All right, concept of the operation, and the next part that we talk about, these are the main two, is the scheme of movement and maneuver. Scheme, movement, and maneuver. So I'll check those off. Okay. When we talk about these, there's 2 main differences, and there's a way to think through this. Okay. So for anyone that's in college or has gone to college or has taken classes before, I'm sure some of you have written very long term papers or very long reports of some kind. So sometimes I was a business major back in the day. When I wrote some business reports, I might write a 50-page report with all these analytics, all this data, all these write-ups, and it's going to take someone a considerable amount of time and energy to read all that. So what we create for them is an executive summary, where they can read about 2 pages with a couple charts and graphs and get the overall implications of my paper. If they have time later on, they can read the whole thing, but the executive summary sometimes is a very useful product to make. Okay, that is basically what I equivalent the concept of the operation to. All right, the concept of the operation is a brief overview, a brief summary of the events that are going to transpire in your operation. Okay, so you kind of have that, again, that summary, that overview, or that summary. And then when you're scheme maneuver, this is where you're going to get incredibly detailed, down to the very nitty-gritty, and you're going to talk about your operation. Okay, so detailed. All right. So the most commonly accepted way for your concept of the operation to look is kind of to lay out some phases. So to plan your operation in phases. All right. And that is the easiest way, and it's also the most constructive way. It's very easy for a subordinate or someone that's listening to your operation order to perceive or to get a vision of what you're trying to get across when you lay it out in some chronological order, such as phases. Okay, so phases. Let's talk about this. So let's say we're going to do 3 phases. We're going to do a planning phase, an execution phase, and then like a movement to the patrol base phase. So all right. So the first phase is planning. So I'll say something like this. This is what my concept operation will look like. This operation, I'll write a little shorthand, but will be conducted in 3 phases. So I'll say how many phases there will be, and then I'll kind of just basically almost list them out. I'll say, hey, phase 1 is planning. And is ongoing. All right, I'll say phase 1 ends when we SP. Okay, so right now I know that phase 1 is currently going, we're in the process of it, and it ends when we SP. One thing we want to try to do when we're talking about our concept of operation and talking about phases is we don't typically want to use times, okay? Yes, we are going to make a tentative timeline of when we're looking at accomplishing everything in our mission, but the truth is that the Army, ground forces, we plan things by events. We're event driven, we're not time driven. So we have to ensure that the conditions are set before we can make any actions on the battlefield, okay? So if it's 5 minutes later because the conditions aren't set, that's reality. Now, do we want to miss SP time? No, that's a big deal. But, you know, as we go out through our operation, we want to tie our actions to events, not to time. That makes sense. Okay, and then we'll say something like phase 2. So I want to make sure I say when phase 2 and 3, when they begin and when they end, so there's no confusion. Hey, phase 2 begins when we SP, right there, okay? And then phase 2 ends once actions on objective are complete. Okay, so now we know when phase 2 begins and ends. And we'll do the same thing with phase 3. You know, phase 3 begins once actions are complete on the objective, and phase 3 ends once we've fully occupied and established our patrol pitch for the night. All right, and then we're going into the next operation. All right, so now everyone knows when each phase begins and ends. Okay, it's clearly defined. Okay, so then we're going to go into our scheme maneuver. All right, and that's all you need for your concept. Again, literally, this operation is 3 phases. Phase 1 begins and ends. Phase 2 begins and ends. Phase 3 begins and ends. Done. That's it. That's all you need for the concept of the operation. Now we go into scheme maneuver, and this is where you're going to start talking about your detailed plan. This is where you're going to go from A to Z. Okay? This should be briefed on a terrain model of some kind. All right, this should not be read aloud. You should not be reading off your notes. You should be briefing off a terrain model on the ground, off a whiteboard, whatever resources you have available to yourself. That's how you should be briefing this operation, okay? And this is where your meat and potatoes. You're gonna literally talk from A to Z, you're gonna do it. And I'm talking incredibly detailed, where I say, hey, we're gonna SP at this time, we're gonna SP at 1300. We're gonna get in a platoon column, fire team wedge. We're going to move out initially, leg 1 is at 220-degree azimuth for 500 meters. 100 meters into this operation, we're gonna conduct a halt and conduct a SEALS halt, silent listening halt, where we're gonna look, listen, smell, and all that stuff, okay? We're gonna take that halt for 5 minutes. Once that 5-minute halt is complete, and I feel totally comfortable that we're acclimated to the environment, and that there's no enemy in the area, we're gonna stand up and continue to move out. Every 250 meters, we're gonna establish an in-route rally point along the way to ensure that we have a fallback position, all right? Contingencies on leg 1. If at any time we take direct fire contact, if it's a team size or higher, we will action that enemy. If it's a 2-man size or less, or 3-man or less, we will bypass that enemy contact, okay? Once we get to this point right here, we're gonna turn at a 180-degree azimuth for 400 meters to our ORP. All right, once we get to our ORP, I'm going in incredible detail, okay? And it's all the way through the mission, literally step 1 through whatever it is, 200 of how we do it, okay? Get to that detailed, point on this. Don't feel like people are gonna be offended by how detailed you go, or like they don't know anything, because a lot of times you think that people you assume that people know what you're talking about. The reality is that you've been planning this operation, and a lot of these soldiers have been sitting in security. They don't know what's going on. Even the squad leaders have been somewhat involved, but they don't have the overarching image, the overarching vision that you do. You need to be incredibly detailed, brief as if you're talking to a 2-year-old, all right, in language that they would understand, and there will be complete consensus and understanding, okay? We're gonna do another video later on where I go over a terrain model and brief it to standards so you guys can get a good view and good vision of what this is for. But I'll tell you what, you cannot put too much detail into your scheme maneuver. It's not possible, not possible. Okay, once we can complete our scheme maneuver, we're gonna move into a couple other things, okay? The first is going to be scheme of fires, all right? We're gonna do another video on scheme of fires and have some great way to plan fires, but the point is that if you're given fires on this mission, right, you need to have a plan for them. You need to have targets set up, all right? You need to have task and purpose for these targets. All right? The point is, under scheme of fires is where I'm going to talk about the targets I have. I'm going to talk about the fires assets I have, and and I'm going to talk about priority of fires. All right, we're going to do another video where we kind of go into TT LODAC and really talk about a great way to plan fires and a great way to organize your information, and so you can expedite fires on the mission, okay? But this is where you're going to talk about, hey, these are the fires targets I have. You know, I put one at this grid in order to disrupt enemy withdrawal at the objective. I put this one at this grid in the center of the objective in order to initiate fire on the objective. Maybe that's a raid and you want to initiate with a, you know, a mortar round or something like that. All kinds of different things you can do with this, but this is where you're going to go in detail of those your fire plan and the assets you have, and you're going to list out your priorities. And a lot of times, the priority of fires will change by phase. And that's why it's so important to define your phases. So you know, hey, when we have priority of fires, or when, you know, let's say we're first platoon, hey, second, you know, in phase 2 of the operation, second and third platoon are above us in priority of fires. But when it comes to phase 3, we have priority. So now we can know and gauge when we're likely to get some support, okay? Okay, next, after we've done scheme of fires, we're gonna talk about tasks to subordinate units, all right? Tasks to subordinate units. This is a huge, huge part that a lot of times is overlooked, okay? In our task subordinate units, these are gonna be individual tasks to our subordinate elements. So if we're a platoon, we're gonna lay out all of the tasks for the different squads. So you can list it first, second, third, fourth squad. Again, I like to use squads by function when we're in the field. So, you know, we got our security squad, we got our assault 1, we got our assault 2, and we got our weapons, okay? And we're gonna talk two main things here. Kind of at this level right now, we're gonna talk two main things. The first is we're gonna talk their main task and purpose for this operation, all right? So let's say, you know, for example, we'll do the security squad real fast, all right? Their main task and purpose is they're going to, you know, their task is to, let's say we're doing an ambush, okay? Security squad, you're gonna isolate the objective, which means if we isolate, remember that means no one's coming in, no one's coming out, all right? In order to deny enemy movement into the AO, right? Into AO, okay? Again, these are key words that we use, words mean things, isolate and deny. So those are our main tasks and purpose for the security squad. And each squad is gonna have a main task and purpose for your operation, okay? However, under here as well is where we're going to list the special teams that you're assigning each squad. So like for a security squad, you might be assigning them, you know, your point man, point, your compass, you know, maybe you got guys, you know, terrain wild team, whatever it is, you're going to assign them also that in their task subordinate units. A1, you know, maybe their primary EPW, secondary A-litter. A2, primary A-litter, secondary EPW, all of that, okay? So again, we list their task and purpose, and then we're gonna talk about the special teams or the additional teams or additional requirements that you're gonna ask for them. Demo team, stuff like that, okay? All right, once we've accomplished and once we complete our task subordinate units, again, you kind of see how this is much different than your key tasks. All right, we're gonna go to the last main section in the execution paragraph. The last main section is called coordinating instructions. Coordinating instructions, right? Okay, the main difference here that we gotta think about and talk about is when I'm talking about task subordinate units, I'm gonna list each unit out. And I'm gonna give them their specific tasks, right? Okay, the difference is anything that I put under coordinating instructions, this all applies to everyone, okay? So if I'm reading an op order and I'm a squad, or if I'm a platoon and I'm reading my company op order, the things I need to really worry about is my specific task, and I also always have to read coordinating instructions because coordinating instructions applies to everyone. Everyone is subject to them. Okay, the main things in the coordinating instructions that we're gonna get first is we're gonna have our timeline. And this is our timeline of the operation. Again, like I said, we don't technically plan according to time, we plan by events. So, you know, we make sure the conditions are set before we do certain things. However, we wanna make a tentative timeline. And a lot of that is gonna be backwards planned because you know, we might have a hit time in the future and we need to make sure we're established by a certain time. So let's say we're doing an ambush and we must be established by 1800, okay? And this is the best way to plan your timeline. Let's say, so we got it at 1800 ambush is established. Well now, instead of trying to plan this way, I'm gonna plan backwards to make sure I'm hitting the key points that I hit. Okay, so basically I want my leader's recon then complete by 1700. So that means my leader's recon is going to begin at, I want some serious time, so 1530. Okay, and I'm gonna go on back all the way to SP. And that is the best way to plan your mission, all right? That's the best way to plan your timeline to make sure you get this hit time. You establish 1800, all right? Backwards plan always results better. If you forwards plan, you really do run the risk of not planning your timeline correctly and kind of screwing that up, all right? Once we're done with timeline, all right, a big part is your CCIR, okay? Under CCIR, which is the Commander's Critical Information Requirements. Commander's Critical Information Requirements, okay? We have two things right here. We have essential elements, EFI, we have FFIR, and we have the PIR. All right, the biggest one that we really need to focus on is the PIR. FFIR is also important. EFI is kind of goes hand in hand, but EFI is what we're saying here. These are important things within the operation that the enemy cannot know. All right, don't want the enemy to know. Okay, so if we don't want the enemy to know our artillery positions or our command posts are, we should have no notes with us with those grids on it. Things like that. So it's making sure that, hey, if the enemy was to get around us or find us in some way, that there's nothing around us that would give away this essential information, okay? FFR is Friendly Forces Information Requirements, okay? Now this is what your commander needs to know about you. So a lot of times in FFIR, you'll see things like loss of a soldier, all right? Or you'll see like, late on timeline, late on time. Things that he needs to know that might affect the operation as a whole, okay? The biggest one that you guys need to know for sure and really focus on, is the PIR. These are called, priority intelligence requirements. These are things that your commander needs to know if you see. So a lot of times you're gonna see like number of enemy, enemy weapon systems, enemy communication systems, stuff like this. The mission that PIR is incredibly important for and what you need to look at is an area recon. So if you're doing an area recon, you should be looking for PIR because that's going to tell you what you're actually looking for on the objective. Yes, when you do a recon, you're going to do a salute report of what's on the objective, so that's automatic information, but there might be something special in PIR that your commander is looking for, so make sure you look at that. And make sure everyone, regardless of the mission, is briefed on this because every soldier is a sensor. Every soldier is visually seeing the battlefield in a different way, and every soldier can see something that's, some type of PIR out there. Especially, so sometimes like your PR that you're seeing might be, your division commander's important stuff. And so if a soldier sees that on the battlefield, it can have effects of, large scale effects on operations overall. All right, so make sure everyone's tracking the PIR. Okay, the last two I'm going to talk about, we got reports, and we got uniform. Okay, so reports, we're just kind of laying out what reports that we owe to hire. Really, all right? Or you can also be laying out reports that you require from the subordinates. Again, this is coming from a platoon leader's perspective. But if my hire, they need me to report at SP, they need me to report at, occupation of the ORP, they need me to report once the ambush is established, I need to make sure that's in here. So in case I go down, someone else can, accomplish that task. Also, you need to put under reports what reports you owe from your squad. So like, hey, I need to know when my security teams are set, report. I need to know if anything changes on the objective, reports. I need to know when all squads are set in the patrol base and complete, come in and report. So lay that out for what your hire needs and what you require from lower, okay? And lastly, uniform. Typically this is gonna be in accordance with your SOP as a platoon. However, you might be doing a specific mission and require something for the, your uniform. Maybe you're doing, if you are doing a recon and you want specific uniform to match the certain type of vegetation that you're going in. Maybe it's ghillie suits, maybe it's a different type of uniform because the terrain you're usually in is woodland and you're going to more of a desert terrain. So you want to make sure that you have the right face paint or whatever it is. So go in detail of any specifics that you want changed for the uniform. If it's just the regular uniform that you've been doing and you have an SOP established, then you can always just say in accordance with the SOP. So I'll mark these off here. Okay, so those are the main areas of your execution paragraph. Again, this is really the main meat and potatoes, that scheme maneuver, where you're really going to describe the how. But everything else really supports it, all right? And you really want to brief this in order. If you brief it out of order, yes, you get all the information out, but people get confused. The operations order, and specifically the execution paragraph, is built in a specific way so it brings understanding to the listener. It brings comprehension. Brief it in this order and go very in-depth and detail on that scheme maneuver, and you're going to have a great execution paragraph. Absolutely. All right. I hope that this video was helpful. Hope that you got something out of it. Again, I'm Captain Justin De Leon from the University of Iowa. Rangers lead the way.